Hi, my name is Johanna Wikberg and I wrote a comic about being gay and Christian.
As you know, if you've been watching my video about my own religious upbringing, I have a bit of a religious trauma in my backpack. And I'm trying to heal that by listening to cool queer people of faith talking about how okay it is to be queer and Christian. And Johanna is one of those people.
My name is Johanna Wikberg and I'm a minister of the Lutheran Church of Sweden. I've been a minister for 3 years now. And I'm also involved in ECO, the Swedish Christian LGBT organization, for many years. I moved from Sundsvall to Gothenburg 12 years ago, and the third day I went to ECO's camp for young LGBT Christians and fell in love with the organization and just connected with a community of Christian and queers and have stayed in the community since then.
It's also through this organization, ECO, that Johanna and I know each other. And this was Johanna's way to becoming a minister.
I grew up in the church, but had a troublesome coming out. I identify as queer and also as a cisgendered lesbian. Well, that was not really, it didn't really work out in the congregation that I grew up in to come out as that. So that was a little bit troublesome. But I never had any problems with, God and myself. And when I studied, I moved to Gothenburg and I studied art and I studied gender studies. And it was through the gender study that I found queer theology. Theologians who was discussing mostly stuff like gender and God and queerness in the church and so. So it was through that I found the queer theology, and it kind of opened up so many doors for me, intellectually and in my faith and for me personally. So my path to theology studies was through the queer theology. And I had this longing for being a part of the church, and I worked at ECO at a project. So for a few years, ECO was my workplace in a project that we called Congregation for Everybody, or Church for Everybody. We worked with LGBTQ questions and interviewed churches in this region. And then I found out this kind of suits me. I want to work with faith and churches and people, and also realizing they don't have to be queer. I can work with straight people too. I can work with in the church, and also meeting a lot of different pastors and ministers, and just finding out that they are just people with their strengths and difficulties. Because I thought that, no, my difficulties, they're too weird, they're too hard. I can't work with people, I can't work with crisis, I cannot read biblical Greek and so on. And then I found out, realizing that, well, I work with people, I work with LGBT people in crisis all the time, and that can't be harder with just straight people. So I had this longing for working in the church, and so suddenly I was surrounded by voices from friends just asking me, but can't you just be a minister? Isn't that a path for you? And I was studying theology because I was thinking that maybe I can have some degree of gender studies and theology and work with LGBT Christians and equality in the churches. But suddenly I realized I'm going to be a minister, and that was what I became.
Now she's mentioned queer theology multiple times, but what does it mean?
I think for me it's so important that queer theology is being created by queers. The kind of theology that applies to queer lives, and not by a straight cisgendered point of view on God or on the Bible. Queer theology is also about we don't have to protect ourselves from Christianity or protect ourselves from the Bible, because true Christianity isn't about heteronormativity. The main thing about God is not that he's or she or they are homophobic. I think that is what queer theology is all about. That there has been and there is a religious war against LGBT people in the world, and that's right. It's not right, and I don't think that's what God wants. And that is queer theology. And the reasons why God is not homophobic or transphobic is a part of the gospel, I think.
And she has combined her passion for queer theology with her passion for art to make people understand this.
The reason I moved to Gothenburg for many years ago was to study art. I like to draw and paint, a lot. And when I was reading more about queer theology, I was I brought actually one of my favorite books, because it's also very beautiful, the Queer Bible Commentary. It's have an essay about every book in the Bible, but as you can see, I love it, but I haven't read it all. It's I don't know what you think, but sometimes reading books not for everyone. And I thought that there's so much beautiful theology written, and the question is it okay to be gay and Christian? There is answers to that, and the answer is yes. And I was so tired of having to protect that point of view and explain over and over again why and how it's okay to be LGBTQ and Christian, and also explain. And I also think that it's God's plan for humanity to have queers within the creation. And suddenly I got this revelation about maybe I can draw it. And I did a doodle about it. Is it okay to be gay? And yes, it works fine. And just to draw all the explanations and taken the best from all the theologians that I've read. And I made a comic about it.
And this comic was released just a couple of weeks ago.
I worked for it for 8 years. And it looks like this. It's in Swedish, but it's Christian and homosexual. This is how it works. I try to draw and I try to explain this is why the verses in the Bible that is used to, really harass LGBT people. Why it's wrong to do that, but also why these verses, they are not about the same thing as LGBT people, or mostly same-sex relationships or same-sex marriage. I've only concentrated on same-sex relationships, so it's not covering the whole LGBT plus spectrum. But the verses in the Bible that are used to hurt LGBT people, there's something going on, some kind of sex between men in the Bible, and it's used to hurt everyone in the LGBTQ spectrum. But I only concentrate on those verses. And that means I also only concentrate on same-sex relationships. But I have been written a lot about queer theology, average queer theology, transgender theology also. So I don't know, maybe there will be a second book. Hopefully not 8 years from now, but maybe.
So who is this book for?
Many people have asked me, is this for kids? Is this for young people? But not really. Because, I showed you the heavy book. I also think that adults needs to have access to queer theology. Adults can also appreciate books with pictures, really. So this is my way to make queer theology accessible for everyone, and just to give some confidence in an easy way, especially for Christian LGBT people. In Sweden today, I think that fewer LGBT kids are traumatized in the churches. There have been so much work going on from ECHO and from other queer forces. Good stuff has been happening in the LGBT Christians in the churches in Sweden the last 20 years. So maybe this book is really written for those who grew up in the 70s, the 80s, 90s. Because in those times there was, in the churches, there was no queer theology, and the church was kind of really homophobic. There are very few congregations where you could be a part of the church as an LGBT person. So I don't think that I've written this for the young kids now, because also they have so much information in the schools. They're a totally other society now, even if there, of course, is hard to be a queer person now also.
But it's also a book that can enlighten people who does not support LGBTQIA+ rights in church.
And kind of also I have written this for the ones who doesn't acknowledge LGBT rights in the churches. So often I meet colleagues and other people in the church who motivate why they don't acknowledge same-sex marriage or transgender rights with, well, but I can't see how the Bible approves that. And I think I wrote this for them also, because that's a matter of knowledge. That's just a lack of knowledge. No, it has nothing to do with the Bible. It has nothing to do with God. It's a question of knowledge. And here is the knowledge. with some shrimps in it and animals talking to you why it's okay to be gay. So that was kind of also an explanation why I read it. To spread the knowledge and that the queer Christians don't have to answer so many questions all the time or like stand up for themselves all the time. Don't have to be responsible to spread this knowledge.
To sum up, listen to Johanna's words to you if you are a part of a body of faith that doesn't support you.
I've also been there. I've also been in a church where I wasn't accepted. And I would like to say like that don't be afraid, you're loved and things will get better. And be careful with yourself, and God and the church is not the same thing. So even if you don't feel accepted by your church, that doesn't mean that God doesn't accept you. The only thing that means is that God holds you even tighter.
If you enjoyed watching that video, please like, comment, subscribe and share the video. I really appreciate you showing your love in that way. If you also want to support the channel financially, that's possible via Patreon, but really no pressure. See you next time!